This is the second part of the lecture on selections for Introduction to Geography at St. Charles Community College. So we've been working on doing selections. We learned how to do them out of the property box. We learned how to do them by select by location. Now we're going to move on and look at how we do we already did select by attribute. Now we're going to do select by location. So far we've only dealt with a single database. We've looked at information within the cities and manipulated or selected it from within the same database. Select by location lets us bounce between two different databases. So we might be able to select cities based on which state they're in, or select lakes based on which city they're near, something like that. So it allows us to make selections between two different databases. So let's just go through a couple of examples. Let's say, for example, that we are interested in cities, but only if they are within the state of California. So if I ask the computer to select cities within states, it would select all of the cities because all of the cities are within a state. So in order to do this, we have to first tell the computer that we only want it to consider the cities that are within a single state. To do this, we change the function of our cursor to the select tool, which again is this little white arrow with the turquoise box, and then select the state that we're interested in by clicking on it, and it turns it blue. So what the computer will do is any manipulation that I ask it to do on the feature class states, it will only do to the state of California at this point. So let's go through a process. If we choose from the Select tab at the top, Select by Location, we get a similar dialog box to Select by Attribute with a few different changes. So again, we can select, add to, remove, or select from the currently selected, but we're starting fresh, so we're just going to select, in this case, cities that intersect. So the down here are pull down. We have a lot of choices here. We're only going to deal with a few of them. The first that we'll use is intersect, and in this case we will select states. Now, just because we've done this, we still have to tell it to only use that selected feature. It tells me how many are selected or turned blue. So if we will read it as a sentence, it will say select cities that intersect the selected state, in this case California. Intersect just means that it has a connection in any way. It's on the border of, it's inside, anything that is on the border or inside of it will be selected. So once we OK that and the process completes, what we end up with are just the cities that are within the state of California. So that is a fairly handy thing, and we will use that quite a bit. You can select multiple states. I could have selected all of the western states, hold the control button down. Any of those options are fine. Another thing that we can do within the Select by Attribute is to add in a buffer. We're going to learn two different ways to do a buffer. So as always, before I start a new process, I need to clear my selected features. So not only does that unselect the state of California, it also unselects the cities. So let's say that I was interested in only the cities that are near lakes. So we can do that as well. So it's not just are they touching, but are they within a distance of. This is used quite regularly with toxic spills or with airflow patterns, things like that, where not only do I, or flood control areas, not only do I need to know the cities that are next to something, but I also need to know the cities that are within a certain mileage of them because they will be affected by some event that has happened. So in this case, again, we're starting fresh, so we would select features and we want cities. We don't want to select lakes, we want to select the cities. And in this case, I would, instead of intersect, I would identify are within a distance of. Now at this point, I have to tell the computer how far I want to go. I can put whatever number I choose to here and whatever units I choose. And then I have to pick what feature class I want it to relate to. So again, my sentence says, select cities that are within 10 miles of lakes. That's the way that this would read. And if I OK that, then what I end up with, again, are the cities that fulfill that requirement. All the other cities are still there, If I open my attribute table, I can see everything, as I usually can, with just the items that are selected now in blue, plus I have a count, right? The selected 12 out of 196 cities that are within this database. So this allows us to, if you will, build in a buffer to a query. There's also a way to actually make a buffer that is its own feature class. So let's go through that process. We'll do it slightly differently than this one. Again, I need to clear my selected features. To make a buffer, we are going to utilize a tool. Now, we introduced how to get into Toolbox prior to this, but this tool is so regularly used that actually it's built right into the default GUI. So from our geoprocessing pull down, we're going to select the buffer tool. These dialog boxes, these tool dialog boxes are very useful because they have help built in. So if you click into the white on the left-hand side of the screen, it will automatically provide you with some guidance as to what you should put into that box. So in this case, let's make a buffer around our lakes. So the input feature is what the buffer is going to be around. After that shows up, then you need to identify where you are going to save your new file, because this new buffer will be its own feature class, a new file. Now, just like with a lot of other GIS files, the computer much prefers, in fact insists, that these files be inside a CAN, inside a personal geodatabase. We learned how to make those before. If you don't have one, you'll need to back out of this process, get into Catalog, right-click, New, Personal Geodatabase, name it, and then get back into your buffer within MAP. So it's an extra step, but it doesn't take long, and believe me, you'll do it enough times throughout the semester, it'll become old hand. So we'll put it inside a personal geodatabase. I happen to have one already created here, and then we'll give it a reasonable name. And I'll even identify how many miles I'm going to make the buffer. So sometimes you might have a series of buffers, a 10-mile buffer, 20-mile buffer, 50-mile buffer, whatever. So inside the personal geodatabase with a very useful name. And then we'll just identify how big the buffer is going to be, again with the units in terms of new numbers, but also what type of units you want them to be. And then you select OK. This process takes a minute. Down in the bottom right corner, you'll see that the process is working as the word buffer scrolls across the screen. Once it is completed, then you'll get notification of that in the bottom right corner, and your feature class will show up now in your table of contents. Your lakes will now look a little bit strange. I'll go ahead and move the order of this. Let's change this color just so that it's a little more noticeable. Just so you can see a little more clearly which one is which. So again, you can see the lake itself is in green, whereas the buffer is the larger area around it with a 10-mile space that's in blue. We'll undraw lakes for a second just to make things less cluttered. So now that this is its own feature class, we can actually use it to do selections or to do anything else on. So for example, we could get back into a select by location. We could select cities. Now in this case, we don't need to use a buffer that intersect because we can just intersect the buffer itself that we've already used. So we don't need to apply the search distance. So our sentence says select cities that touch the buffer. And in essence, that should be about the same thing. Sometimes you get slightly different numbers depending upon how the projections are created, but in this case it looks like we get the same set of cities that we did before. Now it's not uncommon once you've gone through a selection process to want to separate out the records that you have so carefully identified. So we're going to go through that process of how to, if you will, export the selected features. It's very simple. We just go into the feature class in which the selection is. So in this case it's cities, right? We have a lot of cities listed here, but only a few of them fulfill all of our requirements. We right-click on the cities down to Data, Export Data. It's very simple We just have to know where to go, but it's not very many clicks to actually separate the data. You can export all of them, the features that you have within your view, but most commonly we will select the selected features. Again, we need to save this to a safe spot, and again, it prefers that it is inside a PGD. So we're going to call these lake cities because these are the cities that are near a lake. Once we have that process written out, then we will go ahead and OK that. It asks if we want our new feature class to be added, and we'll say yes. So now we have a new feature class. I'm going to undraw my old one, and what we have left over are the new cities, right, that just fulfill the requirements. Again, I'll make these a little bit bigger just so we can see them. And again, change the color just so they show up a little bit better. So that is the only thing that is inside that attribute table, right? Only the cities that fulfilled that particular requirement. These are not the large cities. Remember, these are the cities that are near lakes. So that fulfills the lecture on selections for this week.